Hello and welcome to everybody on Cloud Fitness. So in today's video of Python series, I'm going to cover what is Python function. Why do we use functions in Python? How we can actually utilize the benefit of functions, why they are so important, right? And what is the exact syntax and what is the usage of those functions. These are the few things that we are actually going to see in today's tutorial. So let's jump on to the PyCharm editor which we have been using from our past few videos, and I'll directly go and I'll create a new Python file over here and I will name it as functions.py, enter. Right, so now I have this functions.py file over here. So what are functions basically? So whenever we talk about function is nothing but it is a block of code which is very well organized, and it is organized in such a way that you can reuse it n number of times in your code. So let's say I give you a task in XYZ piece of code that you are creating. I always say that always add 256 to a particular number, right? So now instead of doing that manually, now this might be a very bad example, but this is just an example. So instead of doing this manually, right, for each and every time you are using that variable x, what you can do, you can create a function and call that particular function. So this is nothing but it is a block of code which you can reuse a number of times. Right, now when you have to improve the reusability of a particular piece of code, you go ahead with the functions. Now even if you don't understand this theory, that's completely fine. I'll actually show you how functions work. So let me talk about few things. In my past videos I have shown you built-in functions. I have shown you built-in modules as well, right? I have shown you how they actually look like. So now let me try to use a built-in function, because Python has two types of function. Built-in functions, right, which are already available with the Python has created it for you, and you can directly go ahead and use those functions. Those are nothing but those are your built-in functions. But the other type of functions is Python doesn't have it for you. Those are like customized function. Now Python is saying, okay, if you want to have a logic, which I don't know, you might want to use any different XYZ type of logic which Python does not inherently contain, right? You can create that particular logic inside a function. Now that function is called as user defined function, because in that case user is defining what type of function it is, right? Now user is defining what that function will do. That is why it is called user defined function. So there are two types of functions in Python, built-in functions and user defined functions. So let me go ahead. What I'll try to do is, let's say x comma y comma z. Right, now what is this x comma y comma z? These are just the variables. We have been using variables n number of times, right? And these are the values 10, 50 and 80 that I have assigned to a particular variable. Now let's say I create one more variable t, and I say t is nothing but t is sum of x comma y comma z. Right, now what is this sum? Right, where is this sum coming from? Now this sum is nothing but this is inbuilt function in Python, right? This is nothing but this is inbuilt function in Python. Now moment I hover over it as well, right? The moment I hover over it, you will actually see that even this PyCharm editor gives you details, right? Even the PyCharm editor gives you detail over it, right? And it also shows you that you can go to the Python org documents, and you can always check what the function is about. But at the same time, you can directly control and click on this sum. So the moment I click on control and I hover over this sum, you will see this underline coming in. Now the moment you click on it, you will see that there is a py file that comes in, which is nothing but built-ins.py. Now what is this built-in.py? Built-in.py is nothing but it is a Python file, right, which has all your inbuilt functions contained in Python. So it is a really big list. Now we are using some functions from here, right? This is the function that we are trying to use, right? This is the function that we are trying to use, and this is how we actually write a function as well. Now this is a user. Now this, in the similar way, when you try to write a function, this is how you're going to write it, right? No worries, I'll cover this anyway. So now if you see the sum x comma y comma z, now this is an inbuilt function. What it will do, it will take in the input parameters, which is nothing but x, y and z, and then it is going to do a sum of it. And now I'm just printing the value of t, right? Now let me simply run this. Now you will actually see that it gave you the sum as 140. So this is nothing but this is inbuilt function which is there in the Python. So now let's talk about the user defined functions, because these are very important, because most of the time you might want to use them. So whenever you have to create a function, the very first thing is you have to give the function definition. Now that definition, how do? You do it using the def keyword. You write def, no matter whatever the function is, you have to write def keyword. Now the moment you write def keyword, you give a space and you tell the function name, right? So let's say I put user defined function. So this is the name of my function. This user defined function is nothing but this is the name of my function, and then open and closed parenthesis, and then a colon. Now this is nothing but this is the syntax of a user defined function. Now this is the syntax of user defined function, but now you have created the syntax, but function has to do something, right? What that function will do, that is something that you write inside it. So let's say this function does nothing, it simply goes ahead and it prints the statement. Okay, let's say print the variable. Okay, now let me write it over here, variable. Okay, now I'm using f string over here. I've already created a video on f string. Okay, so I'd go ahead and watch that particular video, and let me put in the string here, and let me put in the value string over here. So now what is happening? If you see, I have created a function, def user defined function. Def is a keyword, definition of a function. User defined function is the function name, and opened and closed parenthesis and colon. And in the lines, we basically write what does that function has to do. This function has to print this particular statement, print the variable. Now what is this variable? This variable is nothing but the input variable to this function, right? So whenever this function will be used, that time it will ask you for a variable, right? It will take the variable, it will take the parameter, and then it is going to print this particular statement using that particular parameter, right? So this is nothing but this is the function. Now in the similar way, the sum that we were using at the top, right, what it was doing, it was taking in few set of variables, right? 10, 50 and 80, right? It was taking in that, and then it was doing sum on top of it. So here basically we are just defining the input to that particular function. Now this is how you create a function. Now okay, now let me simply run it. Now if I run it, will anything happen? Nothing will happen, because we created a function, but we did not ask Python to do anything with that function. What will Python do with this function? It can't do anything, because we have not written a command to use the function. Now how do I use the function? To use a function, what I will do, what we do is we call a function. So this name, the name of the function and the parenthesis over here is called calling the function. So moment you call the function, this is called as using that particular function. Now let me put a value over here, string, right? Now this is called function calling. So the moment I call this function, I am actually commanding Python that, hey, I have created this function, use this function, and use the string as the input variable to this particular function. Now if I run it, you will see that it prints the variable string, right? So this is nothing but this is your function. Now I can call it n number of times. So I might have a very big piece of code where I want to do any kind of work in my code, and I want to call it x number of times, n number of times. I can do that. That is what functions are for, right? So if I call it, let's say I have called it 5 times over here, so the 5 times it has printed me the statement. So 5 times, instead of writing this, right, what I have done, I have created a function and I have called that function. Now even if I have to do a change, right, let's say instead of print the variable, I want to write print the variable value. Now even if I have to make a change, instead of making change at the 5 different places, like if I would have not created this function, I would have simply written this particular statement 5 times, right? Now I would have made change at the 5 places. Now instead of doing that, what is happening, I'm just making change in my function itself, right? And now if I run it, you will again see it changes, prints the variable value, string 1, string 2, string 3 and string 4. So this is nothing but this is a user defined function. Now remember that, let me comment these all lines. Now let me say I don't put in any string over here and I simply run this. What is going to happen? Now in this case, you will actually see that it gives me an error. Why does it give you an error? It gives you an error because it is saying that it is missing one positional argument, right? Because this function, when you created this function is expecting a value, but when you're calling that function, you're not giving any value. So this kind of errors will always come up because you have to provide in the value which you have used in the function as well, right? So this is nothing, but now if I run it, you will actually see that now this time it does not give any error. Also remember that let me try to do one thing. Let me try to print this particular statement. In fact, let me try to show you one more thing. Now if you see what I have done, I have added a print statement to the call of this function. So earlier I was simply calling this function. So what was happening? This function was running, right? So the moment this function ran, it was printing the statement, right? But now what I have done is I am saying print, right? If you look over here, I am saying print user defined function value, right? Now what is happening over here? You can actually see what is happening. It is printing you none. It is printing you none. Now why is this happening? Or in fact, let me do one thing. Let me remove the print statement from here so that you understand it even better. So now what will happen? This function is going to run, right? Now this function is not going to do anything because I don't even have a print statement over here. Now if I run it and I'm saying over here print whatever value you are getting from this function, run, right? Whatever value I'm getting from this user defined function, whatever value I'm getting after running user defined function, right, with this input parameter, print that. Now it is giving you none. Now why is it giving you none? It is giving you none because a function should return a value, right? It should return a value. Now this function is just doing something, right? It is not giving you back anything, right? Print statements you can write anywhere and print statements will work, right? But this function is taking your string, but it is not giving you any output, right? So in this case, what I can actually do is, now if I say return, right, if I say return this, now what is this return? Now this return is actually telling your function that, hey function, hey user defined function, take the string, right, do whatever work I'm saying and then return me this particular value. Now if I go ahead and run this, you will see that instead of none, it has printed your whole statement, right? So this is the usage of return. So now what you see on the screen, this is how your actual functions work. Your function returns a value, and why return is important, because right now you have actually seen it, right? When your function is doing something, it has to return you back that particular value so that you can use that value, right? So that you can use that value, correct? Now similarly, let me also do one thing. Instead of string, let me say x comma y, right? And I might say, let me simply put in over here x plus y, right? And now if you see what is happening over here, right? Now my function is actually expecting two parameters, x and y. So let me say one variable is 2, the other variable is also 2, and then it has to return me x plus y. It has to return me the summation of 2. And now when I run it, you actually see how this has worked, right? It has returned me 4. But now if I don't put a return keyword right over here, and then if I try to run this, you will see it gave me none. Why it gave me none? Because my function is not returning me anything. It is going to the function, it is taking 2, and then it is doing sum also, but it is not returning me anything. Now since this is not returning me anything, and that is why if I am trying to print what is the output of user defined function 2, it is not giving me anything. So I hope you understood it. What is a function? What is the general syntax of a function? Why do we use functions, right? And how we can actually use these functions. So I hope you understood it. Do remember to like, share and subscribe to my channel. And I hope you're liking this particular play series as well. So thank you so much for being till here.